It is actually it's quite cold here as well. I live in the suburbs of Baghdad in the south. It's a
Mm-hmm.
little town, and relatively in countryside, it gets colder than the
Yes, it's more cold.
trafficked
Yes.
city,
Mm.
or trafficked metropolis, and
Yes,
that's
yes, I
due
see that.
to the pollution level is minimal here. There are multiple reasons actually where we can attribute
Uh-huh.
the coldness of weather,
Mm-hmm.
including, but not necessarily specified, the trees, the
Mm.
forest or forestation that we do have here is relatively higher
Mm.
than that of the trafficked city part, and that can be a potential reason where we can attribute.
Mm. So, how much was the temperature last night at your side?
Okay, well, I'm not that far actually to be considered that quite side here,
No,
but
not that in details. It was, I think, 2 degrees centigrade at Baghdad last night.
um, temperature. Well, I'm not sure about. Let me just check that here.
Hmm.
Alright,
They
it's
always written
12.
something,
I think it's
but
12,
written.
but it's not quite accurate.
Yes, it is not accurate at all. They written something and tell you that it's like something other.
Absolutely, I think that's the case here.
Hmm.
Okay, so today it's going to be listening day.
Yes,
It's
after 2 years later.
well, um, ironically speaking, of course. Are you talking
Uh,
about you or about me?
no, about me. It's about me. It's related to me.
Okay, well, as much as I know that it's a kind of responsibility that you have to consistently work on something that you're assigned to, because this is part of our probably procedure to go.
Yes.
Before I continue, is my voice clear or it has some echo?
Yes, yes, no, no. Your voice is clear, and I want to say something, Walid.
Yes.
You are just like my brother and my friend, and I appreciate our brotherhood and friendship between us. But really, when you are talking about my responsibilities as a father, as a manager in my business, but I feel that I am proud with myself that I'm challenging myself, challenging the time, the shortening time, and try to take the IELTS and follow up with you step by step to improve my English language. And excuse me sometimes because I'm delaying to do my task, but this is the situation at my side. So this is my explanation or declaration about what I'm trying to do and why I delayed the listening test task for you.
Is this what managers usually say or is just an excuse?
No, no, this is just an excuse and it is extraordinary for you only. As a manager, I do not give any excuse.
Okay. Well, because that is going to be translated as a justification for not doing the task.
Yes, and I don't give an excuse in front of the employee because this will lead them to be more weak. They
You,
always
do
have
you
to
mean weaker? Weaker?
yes,
Okay.
weaker.
Okay.
Yes, weaker. They always have to see their manager strong to learn the strength from him. But I'm trying to be strong on the right, not on the false.
Well, but there's always a silver lining out there. Silver lining is something that is hidden that people don't usually see. We call it
Yes, you are.
silver
You,
lining. I recommend that you check this expression out. It's very common, and I think there is a movie called Silver Lining. I'm not sure
mhm.
100%, so don't take my word for granted. Do
No.
not take my words for granted. This is another expression where we say to situations where we tell people not to take everything we say as it is. Maybe there are other options or interpretations or conditions or situations or abnormalities or exceptions out there that may go against what we already said in our discussion here. So don't take everything for granted, or take it. Another expression. I'm sorry, but these are very common expressions, and they are very.
Walid, silver lining. It is more academic than positive side.
It is. It is. It is.
Okay. Or
It
the
is.
shining part, shining side.
Silver lining. Silver linings. There's something maybe that is hidden in, like, for example, something that does not look okay. So, for example, you see a homeless person, and you stop and you give him like $1, and then while you're giving that, a very rich person sees you, and he comes to you and asks you to come with him to his company to assign you as, the CEO, for example. So there's always silver lining to things that people see or do, not necessarily tied with the kind of context or the situation that I already said, that there's something negative in your performance or in your behavior in front of your employees. But there's always reflection of transparency and honesty, and being very clear, crystal clear about the conditions that the company is going through. Another important expression that I would probably throw on the table of our discussion tonight before we get started is to take things with a grain of salt. To take things with a grain of salt. Like, for example, everybody has a friend in his life who exaggerates things. Like, for example, instead of saying, well, I got stuck in traffic, they would say, I had million cars in front of me in the road. So they're always exaggerating. I'm pretty sure there's one person in your life that does this kind of exaggeration all the time, constantly.
Of course.
So, like, when you meet one of your close friends and you start talking about the number of friends that you have, you come across that person and you say, well, yeah, go ahead and meet him, but take everything he says with a grain of salt. That means
overdo everything.
Not overdue, but they it means that something.
Magnifying everything.
Yes, they exaggerate, not magnify. They exaggerate. The word magnify is good for objects, like when we try to magnify something. Maybe it's metaphorically speaking, but you need to be skeptical. Skeptical, متشكك. Suspicious. Try to be suspicious, or to some extent skeptical about everything he says. So take it with a grain of salt. Like when a political spokesman says something, take it with a grain of salt, because they can't be truthful all the time.
If it is to give something more than its real size, why they refer it by grain of salt, which is tiny thing?
There is a story behind it. There is a story behind this. I'm not 100% sure about the story of it. I need to trace back the origin, the etymology of this expression, which is the origin of the proverb. It's an idiom or a proverb. I'm not quite sure. But every saying in English, مقولة, every saying in English has a story. Has a story.
Of course.
And it comes from certain conditions or occasions or things. And since we started talking about al-amthal or proverbs, let me just write that down to you because it's a very common word. The word, the proverbs actually are more socially related sayings than language related things. And this is something that we should understand, that when we talk about proverbs or al-amthal or sayings, they are more socially related, not language related. That means that not teachers or dictionaries came up with them, but the society, like in our condition in Iraq, we have sayings. They are not related to Arabic as much as they are related to Iraqi context.
Yes,
يعني
yes, yes.
المحيط
It's
الاجتماعي
related.
العراقي.
Yes,
هذه
it's related
الأمثال
to culture.
هذه الأمثال هم يعني نتاج الحالة الاجتماعية أكثر من نتاج المحتوى اللغوي. يعني مو القواعد هي اللي جابتهم, but the context, the
Yes, yes,
society.
yes, the
So,
culture.
for example, nowadays, if you go to newspaper headlines and you see this expression here, let me just write it to you. Iraq is stuck in the rut with its economic crisis. Now, you see this expression. I want you to explain it to me. What does it mean? Simply.
Simply, Iraq is with a bigger problem because of the economic crisis.
Now, how did you conclude the meaning of stuck in the rut here?
Stuck, I think it refers, for me, for the first impression, stuck that prevent one from keep moving towards.
And the word
Forward,
rut.
versus target.
And the word rut.
Rut, I think its meaning is something like starry something.
No. The point that I want to say here is that most of these expressions come from socially related issues out there. And
Okay.
this expression is coming from horses.
Okay.
So back in the time where there were no vehicles, there were no cars or communication, transportation,
Okay.
horses had carts with them. Like they used to pull carts out there with them, and like especially in farming. So what happens is that when it's raining and the roads become muddy, and you're riding your horses in the cart, they always get stuck in the rut. So rut يعني الطينة الوحلة.
Rut, which means the muddy way.
Yes,
Or the muddy
الوحلة الطينة الوحلة, okay?
yeah.
So what happens when we say, oh my God, I'm stuck in the rut, يعني أنا قاعد بوحلق يعني شلون
يعني
احنا
طمست بالعربي.
طامس يعني فهنا من يحكي أن العراق طامس بأزمة اقتصادية. هذا يعني أنه من تستخدمه أولا يعني it's indicating that your level in English is very high because you started to understand the context of these sayings.
Stuck in the rut.
Stuck in the rut. So there are actually so many expressions like these, and the whole story of it is cultural. It's coming from the history, and the more you try to understand English, you just need to go back 10 or 15 or 20 or 50 years, watch the movies of that time, and you will understand the English of today.
I will use this word with the medical representative who does not get the target. I will say to him, you will stuck in the rut.
You will be stuck in the rut. Yeah, but you're gonna be watching how these expressions are used, because they are not commonly used everywhere. Like, of course, we say them. Of course, we say them, but there is a context. There is a context for saying them, and let me show you an example here. Let's share this. Let me share.
And then the second thing, particularly in this pressurized.
I enjoy too much, Waleed, with your examples that supported with pictures.
Okay, now I sent you a link. Can you just click on the link here? I want you to go to the link and watch at least 2 examples here.
Okay. Walid, do you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay. You said that we will start today with listening. Listening as a new level, or the next level of
No,
IELTS test, or just discuss my test
no,
that I have
we're going to
shared with
talk.
you.
We're going to talk about your test. We're not
Okay.
moving another level. We're just stuck
Okay.
in the rut of your current level right now.
Are we
But
still stuck in the rut of writing?
yeah, of course. But we need to change to switch
From
to
time to
change
time.
the scenery between now and then. To change the scenery between now and then, because it's very ideal for avoiding boredom and being
I like that. I agree. I
you
agree to
know
100%.
now.
It is talking about Julia Gillard on the law.
Yeah, just listen to the example here. She's using stuck in the rut. And then, did you see how she uses that?
Well, it is still downloading, but I'm just reading how to pronounce stuck in the rut. Ah, yeah. Very beautiful. Very interested.
Okay, stop there. We're just taking one example, but if you need more examples, you can just go back there. There are going to be a ton of examples that can be helpful to you to understand the context of this expression. And the more you understand about the context, the more useful it is going to be to help you incorporate this example in your speaking. And I would say
Okay.
at least use it around 50%, 50 times in your speaking, and that is going to help you so much over the course of time. Develop some sort of adjusting to your current level, and it's going to be a very good bonus to you to help you along the run. With
I
your current.
understand.
Now, first of all,
Okay. Yes.
we're talking about listening, and
Yes.
we need to understand what listening is and how it is important to people to improve their English through listening, and then we are going to dial the channel to talk about IELTS listening, because this is our
Okay.
major topic of discussion. And part of our agenda of today is to review listening section that we had talked about before, and talk about the skill of listening and how we can improve it. And I will give you another task for listening. I will give you some worksheets, and I will ask you to write
I would love that. Okay.
reflection about the major challenges that you have with listening. And first of all, let's talk a little bit about listening. Tell me about your listening. What kind of things do you listen to occasionally on when you have free time? English, not Arabic. Whatever
Well,
you
to be
listen
honest,
to or watch in
yes.
English.
Yes, I'm listening and watching daily when I have a leisure time to the English channels, English news channels, to be more clear, which is BBC, France 24, and CNN. And try from listening to them to learn new words, new phrases, and sometimes to know how they pronounce the words that I know before but do not pronounce like them. Um, I think just these three channels, three TV channels. Yes.
Okay, now how is listening in Arabic different from listening in English? What sort of things that can be different when it comes to people,
Yes.
when it comes to listening to people talking Arabic and listening to people talking English? What sort of challenge do you have
Yes.
oscillating back and
I
forth between English and Arabic?
Well, in my opinion, I think the most important challenge or the big challenge is the new words that I didn't hear before that prevent me to from continuous following up with them, or from continuous connecting the meanings of the X words with the beyond words. While in Arabic, it's the native language, so I'm just listening and understanding and following up with each single words to get the full picture or full image about the news or the topic that they are talking about. While in English, I have to stop to know the meaning of some one, two, three words through the whole paragraph or the whole topic that they are talking about to to make the picture full in front of me. I think for myself, this is the big challenge that I have faced.
Now, Osama, let me tell you something. It's in today's high technology and highly advanced world. It's really stressing not to understand people because communication verbally, not written, is far more common nowadays than before. Yet, I think we need to devote some time to improve our skill of listening because it's genuine to listen to something and craft your ears to become more attentive to listening. It's actually a gift to be a good listener. You come
Yes.
across, and this is probably what I've noticed in the Middle East context in general, that two people can talk at the same time and make sense of each other.
That's right.
Like you and me start greeting each other in the morning. We are talking at the same time without giving space or room to the other person to listen to and make sense of each other. So it's more culturally related problem than linguistically related problem or language related. It's more about the context of the culture in Middle East that people try to be very outgoing. They try to be very welcoming to their guests or their friends by showing them how optimistic they are to see them and welcome them and invite them to tea or bacha or tashrib or something, and insisting on doing the payment and doing all of that kind of necessary things to show their kindness and generosity and being welcoming and hospitable to their guests. So, I mean, even we have this quote that, oh, our guests, if you come to our house, you'll find that we are the guests and you are the owner of the house. It's a kind of poem out there. So the idea that it helps to build relationship and solve problems and understanding the conflict and or resolving the conflict and being very accurate to at work, of course, if you're a good listener. Like if you're a good listener, that is going to be very effective to reduce the margin of error at your work because you're listening carefully to your manager, you're following a step by step everything that they say, and it builds a friendship because people need an open ear to listen to them.
Of
So
course,
if
of
you're an
course.
attentive listener, there should be very high potential that you are going to be a very successful.
You know, in Arabic, they are saying that the good listener will be the good speaker.
Yeah, of course, I agree with that. I think that's very precious saying, and ostensibly from the point. Just for your information, that occasionally I throw certain words that might not be familiar to you, but you need to learn them because you already mentioned that one of the hindrance issues that you come across, if you hear me,
I hear you.
is your conflict with new words. And these are actually not new words. They are common words, but you didn't get the chance to listen to them because you didn't do enough listening.
Yes, you're right.
So
I think that.
if you on average listening, if you're on average listening to less than 1 hour, or yeah, less than 1 hour a day of English, there is higher chance that
Okay.
you'll have difficulty listening to academic context conversations or debates or arguments or conferences or presentations here and there. And that is just because we didn't make sure to have enough conversation and enough listening to people talking. And I think
Okay.
one way,
The point. Sorry. Sorry, please.
the key, the key solution here is to invest more time in podcast.
Ah, that's my question that I would to ask you. Is the academic listening channel is the podcast that you shared with me?
You know, maybe this comes as a surprise to you, but I do not think that academic context is enough to help you learn English. And
Okay.
the reason of which is that they filter. I mean, okay, it's okay to filter some common expressions and tell people about them, but you're not hearing the real English. The real English is a flow, it's a mixture, it's a cocktail of a combination of all forms of language playing together and acting together and performing together and becoming together. So you need to listen to authentic listening, social
And
listening.
all that characteristic that coming with each other comes from the practice or from the connection with the native people.
We cannot say it's practice or just connection with native speakers. It's a hybrid thing. It's a combination of both. It's a combination of many. Like for example, I'll send you this podcast and I'll just put it in the list of things that you should listen to and report back to me. I'm just rating that as a note here.
Okay.
Give me 1 second, and here you go. Do not open the
Yes,
link.
please.
This
Okay.
is a podcast that talks about how to learn English. But when he talks very freely. There is no script. He's just commonly regurgitating. He's throwing out his wisdom, his experience, his career to you. He's telling you what he faced with learners of English and how they overcame the kind of obstacles that they had with English language. And you can listen to that on your drive to work or coming back from work. I think we have enough time to spend learning English in cars than at home.
Of course, because the
I'll say
lost
it
time in the
again.
traffic jam.
I'll say it again. We have more time to learn English when we stuck in traffic than at home. And that is because we get stuck in traffic relatively 1 hour or more on average every day. Of course, so if you multiply the 5 or 6 days, that's gonna 6 hours. 6 multiplied by 4 is 24 hours per month of practice. And when we talk about practice, since this is boring and depleted word, we can replace it with active listening. Like we're listening to people, we're listening to famous speakers. The other thing that I recommend people listen to is the interviews with people because they don't have script. They just talk back and forth, which is really beautiful. Like you listen to them talking naturally, and you collect words from here and there, and they will become some sort of pattern.
But I think it should be interviews with Britain or British
Don't
citizens,
get me
local
started.
citizens, because with the Americans, I think they are swallowing some words or some letters
Oh my
at
God.
least.
Osama, please don't get me started on this because this is not something that um, listening to Americans and British and Australians and Canadians is really good. All of their accents and dialects are equal. There is no superiority of British over Americans or Australian. They are all common. And in language, we do not have something called swallowing. There is some interpretation to what happens in these languages. And what you call as a swallowing is probably something you've inherited from people who did not learn English, or they failed, or they haven't heard the real British dialect. Real British dialect is really complicated. Not to say that Americans are is not, but or Canadian, but there are hundreds of accents around the world, and American and British are two of them. So there is no superiority. You need to listen and train your ear to listen to multiple nationalities.
Accents. Yes.
London and UK and New York and Washington and California and United States, holistically speaking, are all nations of immigrants.
Yes, you're right.
So if we Google the number of immigrants in the United States right now, there are 44 million immigrants in the United States. And if we Google the number of immigrants in UK, there are 9.5 immigrants in UK.
So in US, they are a nation equal to the people of the Iraq Republican.
Osama, I think talking about dialects is not necessary. Talking about accent is not necessary because this is more tonal issue than linguistic issue. It's more about the tone of saying things, the sound of saying things. Like when we talk about American English or British English, we are talking about the sound of our voices. And the sound does not carry that much meaning as much as the word itself. So it's more like you come across a lot of immigrants speaking very broken English in the United States, and they work as professors at universities, scientists, nuclear physicists, and they're all coming from multiple nationalities. They are very successful in their career. They just speak broken English because they speak 2 or 3 languages. And so English is just a mean, it's just a mean of communication.
A tool.
A
We
tool.
can consider it as a tool.
It's a tool. It's a mean to convey meaning. So it's not necessary or obligation that you need to look at British English. And by the way, when we talk about British English, it's quite controversial issue because this is an old-fashioned thing. There is no pure English. All Englishes are equal, but there are certain Englishes that we commonly hear in media because of the domination of Hollywood in the world. So there is more common people listening to American English than British English because British cinema is not as common as Hollywood cinema.
Not active like Hollywood.
And on average, we listen to media and news in American English more than probably 90% of the time that we listen to British news or British speakers talking English. So there's more exposure to American English through internet, through media, through journalism than British English. Also, relatively speaking, geographically speaking, London is relatively smaller than, California. And to put it in perspective, the population of California, the population of California is 40 million, almost 40 million.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
I think there is also different in English pronunciation way from Scotland to London.
Scotch, of
There is
course.
some different.
This is
Okay.
very technical, Sama. This is very technical topic, and this is probably taking us offshore of the major topic here. When we talk about the superiority or the preference or the excellence of certain or the privilege of one dialect or accent over the other, if we put it in geographic perspective, California has around 56 million people. California, which is one of 50 states, 55 states in the United States. I think there are 50 states in the United States. California is one of the 52 states, or 50, I just lost the count. I think 50 states in the United States. And they have almost equal number of population to the population of United Kingdom. United Kingdom, not London, United Kingdom.
Yes.
So US is geographically bigger. There are more Chinese speakers of English in China than American speakers in the United States. So does that mean that Chinese English is better than American English? No, they are just speaking the version of Chinglish in China and not the American English out there. So the point is that these are just minor tweaks or geographic differences, just like the difference between Basra, Nasiriyah, and Mosul Arabic. And this very minor topic to be addressed here.
Or maybe just like the difference between Arabic in Iraq and Arabic in Egypt.
Exactly.
Arabic in something.
Exactly. That's the major point that we need to highlight here. Going back to probably there are certain steps that you can improve, and I can probably summarize some of them. Is that these are very commercial recommendations that we tell people who are practicing listening and effective listening, that maintaining eye contact with people if we are listening to them directly is very good to help you understand and process while you're feeling relaxed and attentive to the speaker. You need to be always present and pay attention. And also you need to listen to the words that people are trying to say and imagine a picture of what they're talking about, better than thinking of your response to what they're saying. Because this is an often misused skill, that sometimes when you're listening, we're listening to think of what to respond back to people. But in fact, what we have to do is to listen very carefully and conclude the major point of what they are talking about before we go ahead and respond to them.
Okay.
Also, when we are listening, we should not, of course, impose any solutions, but for listening to exam, we need to pay very clear attention to the details and the shift of the answers. So they are intentionally correct themselves when they are giving you a listening task in IELTS.
Okay.
So, for example, in one of the questions, they might ask for directions to something or some place, and they say, for example, go right. Oh, I'm sorry, go left. So while you're listening, you might be tricked to write down right while the correct answer is left. And that comes, of course, by extensive amount of listening. And so being a very attentive listener is very positive thing. It's an indication that you have very good skill in this perspective. Now, to stop talking about this topic here, I would give you the floor to tell me the major challenges that you had from doing the first task of listening here in this test, and what you faced, what kind of difficulty you faced in general.
In the beginning, how did you evaluate my results in that task, and knowing that this is my first trial?
That's easy. You will get the evaluation in the coming minutes, inshallah.
Okay.
But generally speaking, what sort of challenges did you have to
Yeah.
do the
Yeah.
listening tasks?
Always, it is the same problem. Even when I had took the two trials before of the IELTS test, which is the fast speaking and using the pure or native accent that I cannot get some words at the right time and record it on my sheet paper and reuse it again to put it as an answer. Maybe some an address from here or a problem from there, something like that. It is the fast speaking from the speaker when I'm listening to him, and also the new words. This is the big problem.
Okay, now that's a piece of cake. And understanding the design of the test would help us a lot to understand how we can solve and pass through the hurdle HURDL of this test. That the IELTS listening section is actually 4 sections, but they don't tell you that
Yes.
there are 4 sections. There are 40 questions in listening. And every 10 questions are part of a section. So the first probably 10 questions are from the section number 1, which is the
Divided to
easiest.
4. Yes.
Which is the easiest. It's a conversation between two people, and they're talking about random social context issues. So when test designers sit and talk, they ask themselves, how do we know that the person is a good listener and he speaks and performs well at university? They would say, well, of course, if he can understand two people talking about general context, if he can understand a person doing a monologue, not a dialogue, it's a monologue, so it's
Yes.
mono, one.
Yeah.
And if the person is talking, if the person can listen and process and understand a big conversation with more than 2 people, and if the person understands the lecture in IELTS, I'm sorry, at university, in any
In the
class,
university.
at any class, but not specifically a specialized class. So if you're listening to a topic in geography or history or math or sexuality or Freud or philosophy, you do not need to be very specialized in this topic as much as you need to understand and get the general meaning out there. And we often get tricks by the examiners to differentiate the normal listener from the effective listener. And in order to do so, they embed certain tricks. So going back, there are 4 sections. One is a conversation between 2 people. The second is a conversation with more than 2 people. A third is a conversation with one person, like a monologue. And the fourth is a class. And these are the most common scenarios where the test taker is exposed to. So when they are taking the test, you might come across this in the previous test that you've had. So generally speaking, at the beginning of each section, you need to understand the question very carefully. And this is probably the biggest problem, that we start performing the answering the test without understanding and getting the general picture of what the test is about. We do not ask ourselves, what do I know about this topic? We do not give ourselves a framework to work through. So
Okay.
understanding the question carefully is going to help you so much. Understand how to respond back to these questions. So if they say, listen to a talk with two people in the metro. So you need to gather any kind of information about metro, subway, train. These are common vocabulary that I will expect to come. So I need to be ready to listen carefully and get ready and feel that I am part of that. There is a transition period when you finish the first section and you move on to the next section. You just need to hurry to the next section and read the questions quickly of the next section, because that is gonna build background. So there is only one trick in this test. Get as much background information about the context of conversation as possible before you take the test, before you listen, before the listening start. So usually they give you a certain amount of time that you need to work. So once you are writing down the answers of the first section, just go and look carefully on the next section questions. That's going to help you a lot, get a sense of what they are going to talk about. Once you are ready, that will minimize the shock of the content of the conversation that is going to happen. But you will have sometimes a list of options to choose from, like as an answer. And the possible answers may be listed in alphabetical order, or maybe they're not necessarily listed in alphabetical order. So you just need to be careful about that. And also for listening, if you are a bad speller, you will be marked down. So if you do not spell words correctly, you will be marked down. The second most important thing about this listening section is the art of synonyms. Synonyms, Osama, مرادفات.
Yes, I know it.
So they trick the listener because they need to know if you're a good listener and know vocabulary or not. This is me as a test administrator. I differentiate the normal test taker from the active test taker from the fact that they know synonyms. So imagine this scenario. I'm talking with Osama and I say, hi Osama, how are you? I hope you're doing great. Did you have a meeting today? Osama will respond back, oh, I'm sorry. It was cancelled. Now, when you're listening to this, the word cancelled will echo in your mind. And when you're writing down the answers, they would say one of the results that happened after this conversation is that the meeting was put off.
Yes.
So they did not use the word canceled. They used the word put
Cancelled.
off. So if you think of it, if you do not know that put off was a synonym in the context to the word canceled, you wouldn't provide a correct answer.
Yes, I see that.
So you need to actively listen to any synonyms that the speakers are going to use, because they are not going to say the same words, and they will not ask you to say literally every single word from the conversation, and you need to just mark it down because it's not a copy paste test. And there's also, like when we are listening, it's a long listening. So we need to understand at what part of the listening stage we are in. Because, of course, you don't need to cross the limit and go to the answers of the next sheet and it's not ready yet. So these are very important things that you need to pay attention to.
Okay.
But so far, what we talked about is the art of listening and listening to IELTS, and I've given you some recommendations about it. I think It is one of the key successful points that we can achieve from listening and practicing test in IELTS is going to help you get ready next time to get a higher score because you've taken so many tests.
Okay.
And you've taken so many tests in IELTS that it will make it easier to pass this test with higher mark. Now, you asked me about the evaluation of this test. What is going to happen next? I will send you the evaluation, and the evaluation is out of 9. So I'll send you a score for the answers that you provided. And the answers are out of 40, so you get 40 points. And 40 points are converted into a 9 scale because IELTS is a 9 scale, not 40 scales. So I convert that into 9 from 40 to 9 scale and give you a score on the first test. But even if you didn't get higher score, it's okay because this is the first test and we have around 30 tests to do in listening. And I'm pretty sure that by the course of time, we will have higher score, lower score, higher score, lower score, higher score, lower score. To the point that it goes steadily but slower curve to the point that you get very relatively higher scores. At this point, I'll have to shut up and stop talking about listening. What I'm going to send you next is very simple task. It is going to be reading.
Okay.
It's an article. There are 3 tasks that I'm preparing to you. First one is an article. It's an article about how to improve listening for IELTS. It's a very common one. Let me just... And the second one, I want you to write a paragraph reflection about the challenges that you have in IELTS and how you can overcome them.
Okay.
This will serve as a written task and listening reflection to you. And I will probably, if you have enough time, I will send you another writing task that we need to work on for our next meeting because I need to keep you on track and not feel lazy or passive not doing certain writing tasks because this is your major struggle so far. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Perfect. Our next meeting is going to be Tuesday.
Inshallah.
Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Okay.
Yes.
Let me just write that down here. Thank you, Sama.
Thank you to you. Thank you. Thank you, Waleed. Have a nice night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.